D-tackle Keith Sampson, and you guys have a pretty decent read on this guy from talking to his family. 28th rated position, ranking at D-tackle, number 201 in the country. He's a 4-star, 4th rated player in the state of North Carolina, James.
Yeah, actually, you know what? The cool thing about this is when Bobby used to recruit, and same thing with Jimbo, when we went out of state, we weren't getting the 38th or the 50th ranked player. So the fact that he's ranked so high in the state of North Carolina, that's just showing you kind of where this recruiting is coming, going and turning, and people are seeing the right things. But great young man, still a ton of upside, still developing. We saw him, and you can kind of still see he's got a little bit of baby fat. But then I saw his daddy. His daddy's a large mammal, so we know. And his mom has got some good height too. So you can still get a guy that can come in and possibly give you some reps, but he's still going to be able to develop to where in the next 3 to 4 years he could be a playmaker. So you need some depth there. You haven't really been hitting it as far as recruiting, but shout out to Odell for getting on the board.
Yeah, Odell gets him one. You know, we got to speak with him after his visit, and then also got to be there, and James invited me to his NIL panel and got to learn a lot more, but got to see Sampson there too, and he was all smiles, excited. He was eating a lot of that food too, James. I hope you noticed that. He had like 3 plates that night, but it was, you could definitely tell dad, big guy, really nice. Got to speak with him for a little bit afterwards after y'all spoke on the panel, and you know, young Sampson definitely seems excited. And, you know, he's had multiple visits, you know, talking to his dad and saying, you know, they had visited Ohio State. They had been at other big time powerhouse schools, but, you know, Florida State. And really, I think this is Odell. This was an Odell grab all the way. And we talked with him in our interview, and he said in a quote that first, I kind of had it set in my mind yesterday, basically the history and watching practice today on how Coach Odell was working with the guys. Coach Norvell, he is just good, man. Him and Coach Higgins, those two, they're both really been my main 2 guys I've been talking to. So he got to see in person, and got to see Odell and be around him and be around a practice. And there was a lot of good energy that whole weekend. James and I will talk about when we get into the practices, but you know, you had former Noles, including James. You had a Leroy Butler. You had a ton of guys that are currently in the NFL here too, like PJ Williams. You also had Asante Samuel Jr. So there was a lot of good energy, and I had a feeling someone would pop, but Sampson says, let's go. And, you know, we're starting to see a trend now. Florida State working really hard in the trenches, James, it seems like, because, you know, they've got to build some depth there at defensive line. It's a must. And there's a lot of guys out there that Florida State's after. And I think a majority of that top tier talent, those guys are defensive linemen, even getting some 5-stars in here too. So trenches are a big need for FSU, and they're doing a good job of getting guys in here. And, well, one popped on last Saturday.
Yeah, that's Keith Sampson, 26 offers. The most recent ones coming in from Auburn, Notre Dame, and Maryland, an Alabama offer as well. You mentioned the Ohio State trip as well as South Carolina just a couple weeks ago, and play some hoops like most of these guys do as well, and a little discus in track and field. So Keith Sampson, defensive lineman, top 300 player, top 4 player in the state of North Carolina in the full for 2023.